Hi, and welcome back to Hill and Ponton's VA Disability Blog. I'm Natalia Jofre, our company COO.
And I'm attorney Ann Linscott.
So when you last joined us, hopefully, we were talking about Gulf War syndrome, and we talked about a lot of the medical aspects of these claims, how they're not black and white. There's a lot of gray, undiagnosed illness. We talked a lot about that, which was really eye-opening, how the lack of a diagnosis can almost be a diagnosis. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics and, how these claims work, so on and so forth. So I guess my first question for you, Anne, is how difficult are these claims to prove?
They are pretty difficult. In the world of VA claims improving service connection, I would say they're definitely one of the more difficult ones because of how we talked about the medical parts of it, and the undiagnosed illness almost being a diagnosis in and of itself. That aspect alone makes these pretty complicated.
Would you say that a lot of these claims get denied?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially at the regional office level, I've seen just because, as I said, or as we kind of discussed in the blog before, black and white. The VA likes black and white. They like to have their checklists, and Gulf War syndrome issues just don't fit neatly in a checklist. And so it can definitely take a while. You got to be in it for the long run to ultimately prevail on these claims.
So if I'm a veteran and I get denied, does that mean I should, in essence, walk away? This isn't going to happen for me?
No, definitely not. I mean, it's, as I said, an uphill battle. And, sometimes you do have to think, is this, you're going to have to put in the time and have the patience, but they are valid claims, and you can definitely get disability benefits for it. And just because a regional office says no does not mean that the road ends there.
Okay, great. One term that we often hear in association with the Gulf War syndrome claims are burn pit claims. Are these one in of the same?
No. Burn pits are a exposure or a toxin that some Gulf War veterans might be exposed to. But burn pits, it's kind of its own separate beast. So a lot of, like I said, Gulf War veterans were probably exposed to toxins from burn pits.
Yeah.
So it's almost, I guess you could think of it as kind of a subcategory, but the burn pits have a lot to do with air exposures. You'll hear particulate matter as being something related to burn pits. So they kind of relate, but they are technically different.
But they are technically different claims. And there is a registry right now where you can...
There's burn pit registry. There's also different Gulf War health registries, and those are not claims directly. It's more for the VA to gather information, health information about veterans that were exposed to burn pits or served in the Gulf War, just kind of help their research on it. So it's definitely helpful and can, it might help you as a veteran understand some of their symptoms, but it's not a claim in and of itself.
Yes. And it's a hot topic issue right now because I'm hearing, they're talking about burn pits a lot, even in the day-to-day news, and people will even stop me and ask me, like, what are they referring to, these burn pit claims, and what are the burn pits? Can you just give everyone a sense of what burn pits are?
This is a very just basic or general example, like a large trash can fire almost. I mean, it's just burning everything. So
that's what I've heard. They'll throw in medical waste with tires and just light it all on fire, and that's where let it go.
The chemicals.
It's like a very, very, very bad bonfire.
Yes,
right.
That's probably
like not the kind you want to curl up around.
Right.
Yeah, a terrible, terrible.
And they were huge. So when I say a large trash can fire, I really mean large, and not in a trash can. I mean miles and miles of.
Oh wow.
things being burned on the big end of stuff. So yeah, that's as I said, and I've said it, I know a lot, but I keep referring to it as its own separate beast.
It's its own separate thing. Okay. So let's get back then to Gulf War syndrome. What type of evidence can help with a Gulf War syndrome claim?
Some of the best, I mean, so the VA needs to look at lay evidence, which would be statements from yourself, family members, friends, and also medical evidence. With Gulf War, I would honestly say both types of evidence are equally important. The lay evidence, statements of your symptoms, that's going to be what doctors are going to have to use to go off of. So having that kind of evidence is important, but you're going to need medical evidence also, because a lot of these conditions that are attributed to Gulf War service, like chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, are basically diagnoses of rule out everything else, and it comes to that, and so you need to have a doctor doing that. So medical evidence is very important as well.
So can we get into some specifics, because we're talking about lay and evidence, and we're talking about medical evidence. So to me, medical evidence would be, you know, this person is believed to have fibromyalgia, so we're gonna, you know, prescribe Lyrica, and Lyrica helped or it didn't, it failed to, you know, show any kind of improvement. That to me is medical.
Yes. And that would be really helpful. Any kind of medical records, so treatment notes, whether or not, you know, like you said, having records that show whether or not a specific medicine helped alleviate symptoms, that will help doctors to review the record and decide, you know, is this a diagnosis or are these symptoms undiagnosed? And having, you know, any kind of details noted in medical records is helpful. And so discussing that with your doctor and having just some kind of treatment is very helpful in improving these claims.
So that kind of ticks the black and white box. But then when we talk about lay evidence and you're talking about statements and things like that, I think headaches are a good example. So would it perhaps be a good idea, let's say you're suffering from chronic headaches or from chronic fatigue syndrome or anything like that, to basically maybe keep a log, keep a diary? Like what could people do specifically to help?
That would be helpful. You know, making notes about frequency of symptoms, how often they happen, is it daily, multiple times a day? What happens? Headaches are a good example, like you said, especially when it comes to if you have service connection, you're trying to get these symptoms rated. What happens when you have a symptom? When you have a headache, are you having to go lay down? Just making notes and being recognizing kind of what you're going through when these symptoms happen. And I know it's easy to overlook it yourself, but a lot of times family and friends, they might notice what you're going through, and that can be another good source of lay evidence.
It's funny because I know I've suffered from migraines. I think you've had some as well. We have a lot. And it's funny when you have a migraine, you become so sensitive to noise. And so like to me, the TV will be blaring or something will be extremely loud. And in reality, it's probably on minimal to low volume. So these are maybe the kinds of things that like a family member looking from the outside in can say, you know, they become, you know, hypersensitive to noise, to light, to smells. You know, some people get instantly sick if they even smell food cooking or whatever. So any kind of documentation of that
any
kind of
information
experience,
like that, sharing it with a doctor will help them help you. So.
Yeah, great. What would you say, just really quickly, outlook on these claims? Things getting better?
I would definitely say, I mean, like you said, you hear about burn pits and you hear about these issues a lot more. I think as people become more aware of the issues, there's more research done and more knowledge is gained from it. So I think the outlook it's still going to be an uphill battle, but I don't see anything, you know, I always think it's helpful to get more information out there. And so hopefully the outlook continues to improve.
Great. Thanks, Anne. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to visit our website or call our office.